those situations, you probably find this to be true too. Like, I'm my own worst enemy in my thinking.
Yeah.
Nobody was holding any of that stuff against me. People were excited to see that I had changed, and people were really excited to see that I was a tattooer now.
Right.
Because a lot of people knew me as that guy who's trying to make art in all these other weird forms in a drug-addled state.
Yeah.
And now I'm like in a straightforward, clean-minded state, and I'm making art that resonates for me, and it's actually looking like art now.
No,
so
you're right.
it was celebrated.
Do you guys know about KINGPIN Tattoo Supply? I don't know about you, but I'm ordering products every week from this company, that company. I got 1 million boxes coming. I don't want to deal with any of that. This place is a one-stop shop. I do not go anywhere else. I go to KINGPIN. I order all my things. It comes in one box. I have everything I need to tattoo. It is the best. This is where you guys need to go. I can do you one better. If you use code CAMSUCKS, you get 20% off. There you go. What more do you need? Go there now. Bye.
Thank you guys for joining us on today's episode of Unemployable Podcast. Today we have Aries Rhysing with us. Thanks for joining us, man.
Rise and shine.
Yes, sir.
Rise and shine.
Damn.
Super happy to have you here, dude. You know,
Likewise.
welcome.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, of course, dude. Got a lot of stuff going on between shops, tattooing, traveling, and stuff. So, I'd like to hear all that's going today.
Fantastic.
Nice.
All true.
Yeah, man.
That was a pretty
That
good
was pretty
intro.
good.
That's probably one of my
right?
better ones.
I now know all of us need a catchphrase because that was just great.
Yeah, where's yours, Cam?
What?
The catchphrase.
I don't know.
Doo-doo.
It wasn't
I know
as
you
good
do
as
the-
that.
I know you do the intro.
I know.
Oh, is
We'll
Rise and-
we'll work
is
on
Rise and
that.
Shine my catchphrase now?
Yeah.
I say that every time I walk into my shop in the morning.
Oh, I like
Is that your real last name?
It is my real last name.
Nice.
Aries, Ocean, and Rising are all my real names.
Oh, that's middle?
Aries,
Is it Ocean?
Rising, yeah.
God, my name
Damn.
sucks.
I wish
dude.
my
Way cooler
I wish
name
my
than
parents
mine.
liked me.
Well, like Cam said, like you have all this stuff going on, which I definitely want to get into.
Yep.
You know, from the shop, we were talking about, you know, balancing obsession before, the foundation. But where did this all start for you? Where did tattooing start, and where did you get into this career?
You know, tattooing, for me, I feel like tattooing found me, and then I found tattooing.
Okay.
I fancied myself to be an artist before I became a tattooer, and I realized very swiftly that I was not an artist.
Okay.
I mean, seriously, I'm very process-oriented, and I'm a slow learner, but I'm a hard worker.
Like meaning like a traditional artist? Like painting?
I thought mixed media, paint,
Yeah.
graffiti, T-shirt design, skateboard stuff.
Wasn't working out?
I mean, I thought it was.
Okay,
I
yeah.
thought it was amazing at,
Yeah.
you know, in my young, kind of brash, arrogant state of mind. And then tattooing humbled me very quickly. You know, I've been tattooing nearly 25 years, so I come from a time when you were expected to do everything.
Right. Anything that
like-
walked in the door.
Absolutely. You know, you had to do biomech, you had to be able to do a decent portrait, you had to be able to do some traditional, or what we called traditional back then, which was more like new traditional.
Right.
You had to kind of fake some Japanese stuff even and put it all together depending on what the client wanted. So this whole idea that you could specialize and do exactly what you wanted and what's true to you as an artist was alien to me until about 10 years ago.
Right.
And so I learned through having to do all these things that I actually knew nothing about art. You know, the wild stuff that I was doing and throwing on T-shirts or throwing up on walls seemed really cool, and I guess it, you know, there was some authenticity to it, but there was very little skill.
Yeah.
So
And
tattooing,
probably not much foundation.
none.
Yeah.
None. No,
Just
I
because I
still-
can relate.
Yeah.
I don't even know. Like, you have like that pre-style before you've really like learned anything about style.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool because, like you said, it's almost this like raw version of it.
True.
You know, but it's usually not the best, right?
No, I mean, there's some humbling magazine articles out there that, you know, encompass what I was trying to do to reinvent the tattoo at certain stages of my career. And
Yeah.
you know, I hate the word career, but, you know, at certain stages of my development as a tattooer, I thought I was going to reinvent tattooing and, do stuff without lines, without black, without structure. And I look at some of those tattoos now, and they've fallen apart, and I've had to go back and redo a lot of work.
When you say magazine articles, what do you mean? Like about you?
Yeah.
Trying to do it?
Well, no, I mean, that was the thing. So this is funny because, I hear so much griping and complaining about social media and the algorithm and what a burden it is to try to post all the time and get traction, which I find hilarious because for us in the 90s to get traction or to get any exposure, it was a matter of like taking photos with a camera that had no screen, no digital screen, and hoping there wasn't like a bloody rag on the floor and that wasn't out of focus and that, things weren't blurry or bloody because you couldn't actually see what you were taking a photo of.
Right, like you had to go develop it.
Going to a 48-hour photo at best, going through all your photos
please,
when you get them.
Please.
Yeah, praying that you've got a good one and throwing most of them away. And then if you wanted to advance your career or your exposure or your art outside of your small community and the people that come into a shop and look at a portfolio, you're putting it in an envelope and sending the picture out to magazines.
Right.
And then you're hoping that somebody likes what you sent them. And then 6 months later, you might pick up a magazine in a gas station or a bookstore, and there's your photo in the back, and you already hate it because you've grown beyond where you were at 6 months ago. Yeah. And so the likelihood of that getting to somebody and them seeing that photo and then
everything lining up perfectly,
leading to clients or people interested in your work, it's absurd. So, yeah. It was a lot of work back then.
So, the burden to post on social media.
I'm about it. It's a gift, in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
And then so you tried some of these other styles and maybe it wasn't for you. You're talking about coming to tattooing and getting humbled. Was that through a traditional apprenticeship? Was it other means?
I tried a couple apprenticeships.
Okay.
Yeah. And, for better or for worse, either I wasn't ready or there was some, interesting dynamics in the tattoo community at the time that I wasn't always excited about. I think that tattooing has come a long way as far as eliminating some of those outliers that can actually be kind of dangerous for clients and some of those mentalities that go back to the negative parts of old school thinking, like the old boys clubs and some of the racism, some of the, misogyny and all that stuff. And I just wasn't comfortable with that. So.
And how old were you at this time?
I started really trying to become a tattooer at the age of 24.
Yeah.
And I didn't actually start tattooing until I was 28.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was that going through the process of trying to find an apprenticeship, not really liking what you're seeing?
I actually started a couple apprenticeships, and the first one, I just was made to do all the art for the tattooers at the shop. Yeah. And then I was wondering when I was actually going to get to tattoo, and they're like, well, whenever you get machines and start tattooing is when you get to start tattooing. And I'm like, so what's the apprenticeship part? They're like, well, you've already know how to draw, so just start tattooing. And I did that a couple times and was not happy with the results, so I dipped. Yeah. And then I tried another apprenticeship, and that's where I ran into some of those, like, personality conflicts, we'll call them. Yeah. Ideological differences.
How nice of you.
Yeah. And I had to turn my back and walk away from that.
Right.
Although the artists were really good in that shop, it just wasn't a place I wanted to be.
It can be tough to navigate that stuff early on.
Yeah.
Because I remember like entering some of my apprenticeships and, like you, like young 20s. And I'm like, what do I know? I don't know anything. And then I enter these places and these things are going on and you're like, is this how it's supposed to be?
Yeah, you don't know any
and
better.
Some days it's like, it's fine. I want a tattoo. I don't care. Maybe this is just what it is. Like when I get to that point, I just won't do those things. Right. Or sometimes it's like, wait, no, maybe this is actually like messed up and not right.
I was very conflicted. I mean, I wanted it bad, but there were certain things I wasn't willing to sacrifice, I guess. Right. And so I actually taught myself. I got an apartment below the apartment I lived in, so I rented 2 apartments. Okay. One was my private studio, which is absurd for somebody that doesn't know what they're doing. But I had some friends that were kind to me and got me some professional equipment, and they would come by my studio. They helped me buy an autoclave and a barber chair. And I just I thought what I was doing is practicing on tattoos that I couldn't make mistakes on. But of course, working out of my house in the 90s, when my only way of promoting myself was to sit in a coffee shop with my sketchbook and hope somebody asked me what I was doing so I could invite them to my house and tattoo them. Led to please look at me. Right. I mean, I tried to do a back piece like 2 weeks out of the gates. Yeah. It was an abomination.
Well, I feel like when you're at that point, you're just saying yes to everything.
Absolutely.
You have to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Back piece. All right. That's all you want. Okay. We'll figure it out. You know?
Yeah. And dealing with all the variables, I mean, that's something that I focus on a lot with the people that I teach to tattoo now, is there are thousands of variables in tattooing, and it's very difficult to control any of them. And so being aware of all those things and at least knowing what a potential solution is for swelling, excessive bleeding, the design issues we run into with placement and things like that. I mean, I had none of that information at my disposal. So it was like crash and burn over and over and over.
Right. Just trial and error.
Yeah.
But I say with a lot less access of information that we have nowadays as well, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. There was no internet.
No, yeah. I was because you see like people that are like learning on their owns nowadays kind of pick it up because of how much information is available. Yeah. And I couldn't imagine back then.
I think there was a couple instructional books, maybe Spalding and Rogers had one, and I think there was some underground like DIY press stuff that was basically just photocopied information. But
I had some stuff like that.
Yeah.
I remember my mentor, because I probably still have it somewhere. He's like, yeah, I have this like tattoo book for you. And he's like, I just have to make it for you. I'm like, wait, what?
I gotta go
what
make
that
a copy.
meant was like he had to print out hundreds of pages from some like file, probably on a floppy disk that he had.
Unreal.
And then he like, crimped to the sides of it to kind of be a book. But to me at the time, I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Like this is secret information.
You got the Tat Bible in front of you, dude.
Yeah, dude. Sorry, when you said that, just a memory came I hadn't thought about in so long. Yo, I protected that thing. I wouldn't even let my parents see it. Right. Yeah, completely different world. And then we're not talking about like rotary machines and cartridges either.
no, we're talking all coils, and coils where the whole idea of tuning a coil for a specific task was completely beyond me. So it was like turn it up or turn it down. And so if things weren't working, usually my answer was just to turn it up.
Yeah.
And of course, that causes all the obvious problems. So
Right.
it was a hard path, a very, very hard path to come into this.
And then where did you start to see some advancement from that situation?
Well, I put together what I thought was a decent portfolio of pictures of, my better versions of success at the time.
After hitting the 48-hour photo and the whole deal.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, I put it together, and I approached a bunch of shops. I actually had to go outside of my hometown, which is Minneapolis, Minnesota, and go to Wisconsin. So I was driving about an hour and a half every day to get to this shop where somebody saw some potential in what I was doing and gave me a chance. His name's Jay Langer. The shop is called The Ink Factory, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity he gave me because I think he saw my hard work. Right. And he saw my excitement about what I was doing, and he also saw the abomination that my tattooing was. So he put me in a place where I could practice doing flash walk-ins in a busy tourist town. And within about 6 months, I had things completely turned around just by, repetition.
Yeah.
I was going to say, how long were you on your own before you had that portfolio together?
About a year.
Okay.
Of just groping in the dark, trying to figure out what the hell I was doing. Madness.
You ever feel like that?
Yeah. Just groping.
But you at least have people to be like,
yeah, the
hey,
guidance.
This is wrong.
Yeah.
I know it's wrong. I've gotten that far. How do I fix it? You know?
No. Yeah, never to like that extent. Of course, I'm lucky to have the structure I had. I couldn't imagine, just trying to learn blindly. Yeah.
It's the worst when you just know you're doing it wrong, but you have no idea how to fix it.
Like, I know this isn't right.
And then you just do it wrong again.
Until one day you do it right.
Yeah.
And I can remember I'm sure you've heard of Mike Malone, Rollo. He's from Minnesota as well.
Okay.
And I tried to get a job with him at one point with that same little portfolio. And he just kind of laughed. He said, I can tell you can draw a little, but you can't tattoo. And I can't bring you into my shop until you've got at least a basic skill set under your belt. And he said, what I can tell you, though, is you need to close your eyes and start tattooing. Very Yoda-ish, strange, philosophical thing to say. And I had no idea what he meant until I was in the middle of a line. And at this point, I had taught myself that you sketch lines in because you want them to be clean, and every half inch or so I'm wobbling and I'm all over the place. So I'm trying to match up these lines, and I'm in the middle of a line on a lady's back in a puddle of ink, spray everywhere. My machine's not working the way it's supposed to, and instead of pulling out and trying to re-enter that line, I just kept going through that puddle of ink, knowing where the line's supposed to go. I did the drawing. I can see where it's headed, and I don't need to pull out and sketch these lines in anymore because my confidence reached that point where it's like, we're going to do single pass lines now. And I was like, that's it. I'm just closing my eyes. I'm doing what I know how to do. I don't actually even need to see that well sometimes to pull a clean line because that happens in tattooing, right? There's so many variables once again.
Yeah, because I remember going around to shops when I was like just starting out and like asking them like, how do you like know where the needle is? How do you know where the line is? And I remember they said like, oh, like I can see the needle, and me being like, no, you can't. You can't see the needle.
They're like, I can feel it.
Yeah,
You're like
I was talking, to whoever, and I'm like, at the time, like 20. I'm like, this is probably the best my vision will be in my whole life. I can't see the needle. What are you talking about? And then like later in the career, like being able to see the needle, and then even later in the career, like not needing to see the needle.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like when you're shading, you're like, oh, I'm just wall to wall. I really don't even have to look at it because I've done this a million times,
Absolutely.
Right. It's funny when you start to catch that. And then you talked about like the confidence. Have you seen boosts in your confidence through tattooing and how it's changed in your application?
Yeah, and it's almost like you can't even predict them. They kind of just like you said, they'll happen mid-line. Yeah. You'll be in the middle of a tattoo, in the middle of a back piece, and you'll be like, oh, that's how it's done, So it's like, I feel like all of us go through those little revelations here and there, and it's always
the last
just
one
like,
you had?
Recently, I did have like a little revelation with like packing black again. I feel like I've always been decent at saturation, but like something happened the other day where I was like, oh, I feel like this is going a little quicker now, a little more efficient. I'm like, I can almost like pack an area and not wipe and know that it's saturated now instead of like wipe, go back into it, maybe hit an area.
Just from like muscle memory?
Yeah, just like that circular motion is just becoming more and more natural, every time you tattoo. I haven't done as many tattoos as you guys, so like the repetition's still building for me. You always get those little victories in every tattoo, or especially every time you push yourself, try to do something more difficult. But that is one of like the wonders of tattooing. It's super cool, Like you said, it's like in the middle of a line, you'll be like, oh, that's how it's done. And it's like, it's hard to explain unless you've like had that happen to you, Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure both of you have experienced many and many times. Yeah. It's cool. It's like hard to explain, it just happens. It's like it's a sick feeling though, because like when you finish that tattoo, you're like, oh, I never did that before. And I'm going to try to like keep doing that.
And it's usually like, and I've been trying to do that for so long.
This is what I've been wanting it to look like. And it finally looks like that. So it's nice.
So when you were doing that back piece, you thought of what he said to you?
Absolutely. It snapped at that moment.
Was the goal to later go back and work for him?
At that point, no.
Okay.
I already realized that I respected Mike Malone a lot for his place in tattooing and his contribution. I also realized that was not going to be my path. I was not going to be like a trad guy.
Yeah.
The folks I looked up to in tattooing initially that kind of helped steer my ideas about the artist I wanted to be were all West Coast. It was all Grime and Marcus Pacheco and then Adrian Lee, and the more visionary tattooers, if you will, that wanted to break the rules in the right way. Still heavy presence of black and strong lines, but the subject matter was blowing my mind what I was seeing coming out of that area. And Adrian Lee still, I hold him in such high regard. He's continually blowing my mind. And Grime as well, legendary status. So I always looked up to those folks and hoped I could somehow, just kind of follow in their footsteps, imitate what they do at first, and then hope to emulate some of that, and then maybe someday make my own contribution.
Right. And then this was going on at the first shop you ever like tattooed at, right?
Yeah, very swiftly after that first shop, though, I moved back to Minneapolis, got into my hometown, and shared ownership actually with a friend of mine.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, at the shop that we owned at the time. It was called Steady Tattoo, and I just kind of landed in our laps. I offered it to my buddy first because I felt, completely wrong owning a tattoo shop at a year of tattooing. So I just kind of stood by the sidelines and helped to pay the bills at first, and then eventually became an official half owner.
Right.
But that was very shortly after that time in Wisconsin.
So you got an opportunity with your friend to take on like your guys' own shop.
Yeah.
What was so yeah, I guess you said you were kind of like hesitant about it because only being a year into tattooing. Did you have any experience with like running a business or anything like that?
No.
Hell yeah.
Once again, I
Yeah.
realized real quick, just like I realized with the art piece, like I had a lot to learn with business ownership. And so at the time, tattooing was much different. It was not a lot of booth rent situations or high percentages. So it was like everyone pretty much just made 50% all the time, period.
Right.
And so in a busy shop, that would pay the bills no problem. And that was great. So, you know, we never really even looked at our bank accounts. We were just like, hope the money was always there. And paid the bills. And eventually it grew, and we added more artists, and we expanded and took over the top of the whole building we were in. And it became a really awesome place.
Now, what were the first like couple months like of that for you?
Of owning a shop or working back in my hometown?
I guess both.
Both. Back in my hometown, they were interesting. I had a lot of like internal things to overcome because we spoke about this in Milan, but I'm in recovery from addiction.
Yeah.
I have been for quite some time. But I definitely had a legacy of some interesting behavior to overcome in my hometown.
Yeah.
And so I was nervous about rising up as, you know, I'm an artist. You should trust me to tattoo you.
Right.
Even though you know me as this person that's done these things. And that's my reputation to date. Now I'm this different person that's no longer doing those things. And you should also let me put art on your body for the rest of your life.
Right, and you should trust me to permanently modify you.
Yeah. And
I didn't even think of that because I left my hometown. I was like, oh,
yeah.
clean slate. You know? Yeah, so you can't, I mean, so you had some time away, kind of.
I
right?
did. About a year.
A year. All right. So then you're like coming back, and it's like, hey, new me, right?
Exactly.
Oh, man.
And honestly, what I find in
All right. Model Citizen used to be cool before Alex started wearing it. Are you tired of being unattractive to everyone around you? Well, not anymore. With the Model Citizen apparel, you'll be beating them off with a stick. Finally, tattoo clothing that is actual quality, that I can wear around and feel good. For real though, the quality of these clothes is top notch. This is like nothing you've ever seen before with a tattoo company. This isn't some Gildan bullshit. These are quality, hand-picked clothing. They have everything from vintage styles, oversized clothes, modern tees. Go to themodelcitizen.com. Get them before Alex does.
those situations, you probably find this to be true too. Like, I'm my own worst enemy in my thinking.
Yeah.
Nobody was holding any of that stuff against me. People were excited to see that I had changed, and people were really excited to see that I was a tattooer now.
Right.
Because a lot of people knew me as that guy who's trying to make art in all these other weird forms in a drug-addled state.
Yeah.
And now I'm like in a straightforward, clean-minded state, and I'm making art that resonates for me, and it's actually looking like art now.
No,
so
you're right.
it was celebrated.
You're right. I feel like a lot of people are like, they see you're doing something different and they are pretty quick to support it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, not drugs? Yeah, do that.
Yes. Tattoos are good for you.
Right. It's almost like maybe easier to support something like tattooing back then as opposed to if, you know, you didn't have those problems and you're like tattooing, they'd be like, no, different job, you know?
Yeah.
And then you like start from down here and you're like tattooing. They're like, yeah, great, do that.
It seemed like a good fit.
Yeah.
Certainly.
So then you found success with this shop. What was that like and how did that feel?
It was far greater than I ever could have expected. You know, I don't know why this is, but even back then when there wasn't social media and there wasn't a lot of ability to even promote yourself in the general public, I've always had a fairly large support network of people that want to get tattooed. And I'm just grateful for that still to this day. Almost 25 years tattooing, and I haven't lost any gratitude for that. It means so much to me that somebody wants to put my art on their body for the rest of their lives rather than someone else's art, or, you know, to make me part of their collection amongst a collection of other brilliant artists' work. I'm always very humbled by that opportunity. And I think leading with that, people sense that it's important to me and it's a labor of love, honestly.
Yeah.
And so even when I wasn't the best, people are like, yeah, let's give this guy a chance. Let's let him start doing bigger work. And so my body of work grew really quickly. I mean, it was way out of my league, but I had almost a 2-year wait list right out of the gates.
Wow.
Which is interesting to navigate when you don't have even like a computer schedule to deal with. It was all handwritten schedules.
Yeah.
Which I still do, actually, in addition to the computer scheduling.
Right.
I can't seem to drop that habit, but, you know.
That was a rough transition even for me,
Yeah.
is to not have the written calendar books or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a couple, before the cloud, I've had a couple hard drives crash and lost a couple years worth of appointments. So out of force of habit, I just keep my paper schedule with me at all times. And that way I can't lose my appointments. But
Yeah, that was a thing in my one apprenticeship, is like I always had to write my mentor's appointments, and then like I'd have to have it on his desk, like highlighted in a certain way so he could like come in and just see what he was doing that day.
He's like, I don't want to find it. It's gotta be-
Yeah, or whatever it was. You know, he's like just finding shit for me to do. Oh,
I
you
was
can
about to say,
play
I
with the
did-
calendar.
Like when I first started, I started with like the paper pocket schedule thing too, and it's cool to have. Like at least like when you're first starting out, like you feel like an adult a little
I mean,
bit. Like,
I
for
just-
me, you know,
I
I was like, I
like-
feel like a grown up now, but
I like writing on paper.
same.
it's satisfying, you
With a
know.
pen,
Yeah, with a nice pen, you know. But yeah, once you like figure out the digital schedule, you're like, do I really want to write that down? Like now that I know I can link a photo like to my schedule, like in my book, you know, like I can't do that on physical.
Yeah.
Like it keeps it easier to like track your references and stuff. I think.
Oh,
a little
yeah.
bit,
That's true.
You know? Yeah.
Did you keep those paper schedules?
Like the first one I had, of course, those are
Good.
memories, you know.
Good.
Yeah,
Oh,
dude.
yeah.
I would never get rid of that.
I'd be curious to see what your notes look like. Tall girl getting half sleeve.
This is just nothing but free tattoos. That's all it is.
That's good. How was it dealing and hiring new artists? Like dealing with artists, personalities. Were they friends? Were they people you didn't know?
In that original shop?
Yeah.
It
in
was.
your original shop, yeah.
It was mostly people I knew.
Yeah.
I mean, Minneapolis isn't a giant town. It's got some of the, some of the attributes of a bigger city like Chicago, but it is kind of a small, close-knit network of people. And
Like you know
tattooing is even
everyone?
smaller. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in our scenes, of
Right,
course.
right.
And so most of the people I worked with, I've always said the people work with me, not for me. And they were people that I brought into the shop because I, either wanted to give them a chance because I saw the same potential that, somebody once saw in me, or it was somebody that I was hoping to learn from because they were better than me. And that was usually the case. Like I've always surrounded myself with artists that I can learn from. And that's still true. Like I've surrounded myself currently by artists that I just look up to so much. And I learn something from my artists at my shop every day.
Right.
And so that was kind of the goal, was to make this dream team, if you will, of like
Yeah.
folks that I know, folks that I care about, but also talented artists at whatever point in their trajectory they were. So, I mean, at one point, I even taught my wife how to tattoo. She was one of my apprentices.
Yeah, you were telling me that.
Yeah. Which it was amazing because she passed me by very swiftly. And
You're like, well, I'm a good teacher.
yeah, exactly. That's what I'll take. Yeah. Put that in the box of, positives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was she working at the? How long was the original shop going for?
It's still there.
Oh, it's the same one.
Yeah, it's
Okay. For
still
some
there.
reason,
I
I
don't
thought
own
you
it.
stopped. And okay.
Yeah, we sold it.
Okay.
And they actually moved it, but it's still in Minneapolis, still
Nice.
going strong, still called Study Tattoo. But under my ownership and with my business partner, Trevor Kennedy, it was about 5 years.
Cool.
And then he owned it for another 2 when I moved. And then somebody else owned it for another 2, and then it sold to its current owner.
And then why did you leave that shop?
I was at a point where I really wanted to pursue some of my personal dreams, and one of those has always been to live off grid.
Yeah.
And that's a very long story, but to put it in a nutshell, I moved to Taos, New Mexico on on a whim pretty much, and took my son, who was 7 years old at the time, and my wife, and we moved into what's called an earth ship. If
What's
you've
an
ever
earth
heard
ship?
of those?
No, I haven't.
It's a completely self-sufficient home that's solar powered, and all your water comes from the rain, and the wastewater from your kitchen and your shower waters gardens in your house where you grow your food.
Yeah.
And they're phenomenal. They look kind of like a cross between a hobbit hole and like the houses on Tatooine and Star Wars.
Okay,
It's like a desert out there.
Ooh, yeah.
And it was amazing. I pursued that dream, and I opened up a shop in Taos called Talisman Tattoo, and that was the second shop I owned.
So you had kind of been doing research on this prior?
Yeah.
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 And then talk to the family, and you're like, "Yo, are you guys down for this?" You know?
Begrudgingly, they were down. Begrudgingly.
Yeah. You're like, "I really want to try this."
Yeah, and it was amazing in so many ways. It was also really challenging,
Yeah.
probably in more ways, to move my family to the middle of the desert in New Mexico in a town of 10,000 people where we knew nobody, and try to open up a shop and finish this house and all the things that we did. But the shop became successful really quick. We became kind of a destination for New Mexico where there wasn't a lot of custom tattooing. And the house I still have fond memories. It was really beautiful and really amazing to live out there. But we reached a point where my son was no longer 7.
Yeah.
And we weren't just running around the desert chasing rattlesnakes and coyotes, and he wanted skate parks and metal shows and, more than
Wi-Fi.
Yeah, Wi-Fi. All the things. And that's what brought us to where we are now, which is Denver.
Right.
Nice.
So is that shop still running?
It got sold. It's now called Taos Tattoo.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then and you moved back home?
Nope, moved to Denver.
Oh, yeah. So you moved to Denver, and then did you immediately open up another shop?
I did not.
Okay.
I was really rather weary of shop ownership at that point. It was hard going in Taos, even though it was successful. It's like a tourist economy, and so it was very seasonal.
Yeah.
And, expenses are high, and people's budgets are low. And it's just a typical kind of like class distinction that happens in a lot of these tourist communities where there's a lot of wealth, but maybe those aren't the folks getting tattooed.
Yeah.
And so we moved to Denver, and I wanted to work for a shop. And I'd always pursued a place called Twisted Soul, if you ever heard of that shop. It was like the mecca for custom tattooing, kind of like the version of what Grime and Marcus were doing on the West Coast, but in Denver. Owned by Big Mike and a guy named Lee Ball and a lady named Alicia Cardenas, if you've heard her name. And so I always had my eyes on that shop. And so I thought, well, if I'm not going to own a shop anymore, I'm going to work at the best place I can.
Right.
So I got a job there and built
Nice.
my clientele in Denver.
Nice. So before you moved to Denver, were you like, "Oh, I'm going to go try to work at that shop"?
Absolutely. So I did guest spots for quite a while.
Okay.
Just to kind of preemptively test the waters.
And family was pretty supportive?
Absolutely. My wife was so stoked to get out of Taos. It was ironic because we wanted to be off grid and be this whole closer to nature and, living in, to be completely in tune with the environment and such. But we were driving like 45 minutes each way to do everything. So the price we paid to be out there wasn't really worth it. I think it kind of canceled out the benefits.
Did you achieve some of that connection that you were searching for, going out there?
I did. I had a complete, not to sound like woo-woo or mystical, but a complete spiritual awakening in Taos.
Nice.
I was surrounded by people that supported me in kind of my final stages of overcoming.
Are you tired of using ink bottles that are spelled correctly? Do you find yourself texting during ad reads for companies? Well, I do, and that's why I use Allegory Black. Are you tired of your black arms looking blue? Do you suck at tattooing and you want to get better? Use Allegory Black. Allegory has normal black and ultra black. Just when you thought it couldn't get any darker, they put out ultra black. Use Allegory ink. It's the best ink on the planet. Go to allegoryink.com and use discount code Unemployable for 20% off. I know, it's crazy. It's so much money. You really should pay full price, but we have a discount code. Right, Alex?
That's right.
I mean, a lot of my inner turmoil and my addiction and things like that.
Yeah.
Because, to be honest, I hadn't completely put it to rest. Even by that time, I was leading kind of like two lives.
Yeah.
And so, I was still showing up to work. I was never high on the job. I wasn't high on my family. But I would find ways to sneak these indulgences, if you will, into my life that were still very self-destructive.
Yeah.
And so Taos is where I found real recovery and a real answer for who I was inside.
Cool.
Just answering some of that chaos and the self-loathing and things that I was still using drugs about.
Right, you were still carrying some stuff around.
A lot of guilt and shame being an active addict who's a dad. I mean, that's humbling to admit, but it's a part of my story.
Yeah.
And so I embrace it now because I'm also, you know, a proud father in recovery who put that to rest. Right. And so my kid got to see me go through that and struggle with that and then come out the other side. So he's got that as an example, which I think is really powerful for him.
Yeah, I do too. That's cool. I'm glad you found that out there. So then you got to approach Denver on maybe as a completely different, you know, person or perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's when tattooing honestly really opened up for me. I mean, that's where I started to lose this idea, like the ink master mentality that I have to do every style and be, you know, a jack of all trades but master of none.
Right.
I met some people in the tattoo community, a couple conventions, who were specializing in something that looked a lot more like the art that is me. You know, a lot more ornamental, a lot more geometric, a lot more visionary ideas. And in meeting these people, I was asking them, like, how is it that you get to just do this style? Like, and they were like, because that's just what I do. And if it doesn't fit into that style, then I don't do it. I refer the people to somebody else. And I was like,
you're like, but how do you make money?
Yeah, it was a big risk. But in Denver, being the tattoo mecca that it is, you know, I think I mentioned to you, it's almost like the sleeve is the Denver dress code. Yeah. Like people are heavily tattooed there. And so I had a lot of clients that were wanting to consult, and I took a risk and just said, listen, this is what I'm doing now. I can take your idea and interpret it in only this way. And if that's not for you, then I can refer you to somebody else. And I was terrified that I was going to lose my clients and not be able to support my family. Very 90s mentality about things. And my clientele multiplied by 10 at that point. Nice. It was great.
Yeah, because it allows you to focus and get better at that style, right? And then become known for it and have direction and all that. But I can even like relate to finding that style or that process. You know, I remember asking a coworker, like, because he was doing it, how do you only do this style? How do you only get, and he's like, well, I only post this. I'm like, well, I'm going to do 2 posts a month. You know, like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, just do it. It sucks like transitioning into it, but that's how you start. Yep. Right. And then learning how to like actually communicate with your clients on how to put it in your own style.
Absolutely.
You know? Yeah.
Expressing your visual language in a way that sounds appealing. Yeah. It's hard at first when you don't have photos even of what you're trying to.
You don't even have like a reference to show somebody.
It's gonna look cool though. You know? Trust me. I mean, all my Instagram is none of that, but like I'm gonna do this for you now, you know, because you're developing your style.
Yeah.
How's that been going?
Probably way easier for me than you.
Good.
Because of like Instagram and the way I think the industry is portrayed now. You know, like at least me learning in this shop where pretty much everyone is specialty. Like we have a few guys that can whip about anything out, but like mostly everyone in here is like, yo, I do this one style. And I don't know, like me growing up and like learning in this shop, like that was normalized to me. It's like I didn't have that weird transition period, you know, where it was like for me coming into tattooing to be a specialist wasn't like a weird thing because it's so common nowadays, you know. Yeah. So I guess I didn't have that like inner worry about like trying to focus on that one thing, you know, at least too, because like I wanted to do a similar style to you. So I guess I had like a clear direction. Now that I think about it, probably I am grateful, you know, for that, being able to like this early on, like go into like a specific style. I really couldn't imagine what it was like that many years ago, trying to explain to somebody like, yo, this isn't what I do anymore. You know, I'm trying to go into this direction when like for my whole career, it's been like, I'm only going in that direction.
The styles like weren't as developed.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, oh, like black work. Oh,
yeah. You know, like I'm coming into a time where like geometric and ornamental is like already has a great foundation, you know, it's like I don't know the word, but it's
like established.
Yeah, it's an established style now, you know. And I also think I'm coming into a time where like pushing the boundaries of tattooing is a lot more normalized now too. I feel like a lot more clients are open into getting something they haven't seen before as well either. Where I feel like a lot of the times a lot of people like to play it safe, you know. So I feel like now people are a little bit more open to artist ideas and stuff too.
Imagine trying to like describe some of these styles.
Yeah,
to
like
people.
I want to do like I want to shade this whole thing with
Think
3RL.
think about new school.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because that's even like kind of an older style now, but back in the day, like, yeah, it's going to be like realism with like color, kind of,
Yeah.
but like things are going to like bend really weird.
Like
And it's gonna
exaggerated
be, like,
features.
really goofy, and the
Yeah.
pencil's going to curve and come at you. And you're like, what are you talking about?
You're like,
I'm like, nah, it'll be sick.
And I'm gonna
trust
use
me.
colors you haven't seen before.
Yeah, I'm going to make their eyes huge.
Yeah, no, I can imagine, you know.
It's like, are you on drugs?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, even like the 3RL stuff, like it originated in what, prison, jail, and stuff. Now, you know, like
I'm actually not sure.
even like, it's just like, yeah, it's weird. I can't even explain it, you know, because it's just so normalized to me.
Right, to do anything against the grain. Like, hey, instead of this really smooth shading, I want it to look really grainy.
Yeah,
Is that
you
cool
know?
with you? They're like, no.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
Like,
make it smooth.
I'm gonna
like
make this
everyone
take
else.
twice as long for a different effect, and they're like, all right, sick. You know,
Right.
like I can't imagine.
How long ago did you move to Denver?
11 years.
Okay.
Yep.
And then when you moved there, was your wife tattooing?
She was.
Okay. Did you guys go to that shop together?
We did initially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because she eventually stopped tattooing?
She did. Yeah, she experienced this amazing success and was, in my opinion, my star student.
Yeah.
For all the folks I've taught to tattoo, I think Missy did the most amazing things with it. And she kind of leaned into neo-trad before neo-trad was even. It was like Emily Rosemary, Eckel, and maybe Loose Lips.
Right.
We're like the only 3 people on the planet known for doing it. And she leaned into it hard. She was buddies with Emily and had all the Eckel books and kind of came up in Denver as like, whoa, what is this? This is
Right.
like all the strength of a traditional tattoo with all these nuances and this elegance. And she just rose up really fast and then decided that she only wanted to tattoo when she wanted to tattoo and what she wanted to draw. And so doing things custom was not something she was interested in anymore. And it became very uncomfortable for her to draw on other people's terms. Like,
Yeah.
no, change that flower, or no, I want a different lady face, or, you know, I want a fox instead of a wolf. And it just wasn't for her anymore. And it was bizarre for me to watch that. I'm like, you're so good at this. You're literally better at this than me in so many ways. And I'm watching this from, you know, many more years experience and wondering, like, what are you going to do next? What could possibly fill this place in your life?
Yeah.
And she embarked on a journey of opening a witchcraft store.
Yeah.
Nice.
And this whole world of, you know, metaphysical things, and there's an apothecary and a library and there's a school
Right.
in her store. And it went from 600 square feet was her first store, and we were wondering if it was going to work. Opening day, line around the block. This is something that apparently people have been waiting for. It fills a need,
Yeah.
you know?
Because I remember when you were telling me about that, when we did the convention together, and then talking to you more about it, and me looking into it myself and being like, oh, this thing is huge.
It is huge.
Yeah, like this, like she built something
Yes.
big with this.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So wait, what does she teach in the school? Is it like school for the gifted, like the X-Men?
You ever heard of Hogwarts?
I mean, honestly, it is kind of like that, but without like the fiction. It's all
Yeah.
about like if you want to learn how to read tarot or how to forage for wild herbs to make your own medicines. Or, I mean, there's been Brazilian drumming classes in there. I mean, it's everything that is spiritual but not mainstream
Right.
exists there. So it's a convergence of many paths, very, very open community. And she does a lot for the community too, which is a big part of, you know, both of our shops have kind of leaned into that as a part of our credo. You know, it's like our mantra, if we are supported by the community, then we must support the community as well.
Right.
Aries, can you pull the mic a little closer to you?
Oh, certainly.
Thank you. I'm like so
So
interested.
how soon after moving to Denver did she kind of put down the tattooing?
I think she tattooed for another 3 or 4 years
Okay.
and then slowly shifted away from it. And then when it was time to be done, it was just done.
Yeah.
But what's great now is that, I mean, my wife is just as heavily tattooed as I am,
Yeah,
and she misses tattooing in so many ways. She comes and hangs out at the shop a lot. Our stores are right next to each other, so
Oh, cool.
she'll come eat lunch in our break room, and she's still a complete tat bro,
Yeah.
just like down with everything. And she'll come out of retirement about once or twice a year just to do some pre-draws
Yeah.
and like, I don't know, get that sense of satisfaction and interacting in that way. And then she goes back to doing what she's doing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
How long you guys been married?
24 years.
Wow, that's awesome.
Oh yeah. So, and I want to get more into that, but I know at some point you left this shop and to open the shop that you have now, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how did that come to be?
You know, I reached a point where, you know, that wait list thing, like there was 2+ years of people waiting to get tattooed again now because I was the only person in Denver doing geometric and ornamental and visionary stuff.
Yeah.
And that was far more fulfilling and far more successful than I ever dreamed could be possible. Like it was a deluge of folks wanted to get tattooed. And the shop owner had a very old school mentality. You know, I love her dearly. She's passed away now. But we were at odds. So it's like, I loved her dearly and I also loved to hate her. It was a lot of contention. And she was just attached to this idea that, yeah, you're bringing in most of the business and yeah, you're basically paying our rent with your percentage, but no, booth rent will never be available. And no, we're not going to pay for any supplies. And no was most of the answers to my questions about how can I, you know, reward myself in this scenario. And so I jumped to Till Death Tattoo in Denver for about a year. And I was on booth rent for the first time in my entire, you know, path as a tattooer.
Right.
And I was like, okay, this is different. This is really different. I make my own schedule. I don't have to tattoo anything. I can literally tattoo all week or tattoo once a week. I can travel, pay my booth rent and come and go as I please. And I had a lot more freedom as an artist. And that's when I really leaned into my style. And that's where I really felt like, okay, now is the time to start giving back. And I leaned more into those activities in my life too. But I swiftly realized that, you know, maybe I need a home base for all the things that I'm doing. And so I worked for Till Death for Josh Reed for a year. I have a great relationship with Josh. I left on excellent terms. But I left to open up All Sacred Tattoo, which is my tattoo shop now. And I'll never look back.
Yeah.
I love what I'm doing now. It's amazing.
And then with you having had so much experience with opening shops, being in other shops, I mean, where do you take that and where do you begin with creating this final shop?
I can say two things about that. One, the way my shop operates is absolutely an amalgamation or an accumulation of everything I've learned that works best in every shop I've ever worked at, and avoiding all the things that don't work.
Right.
So it's very much a tattoo shop for tattooers, designed, you know, for everyone to come and go as they please and, you know, be really comfortable tattooing and just focusing on their art, and everything else is taken care of.
Yeah.
But it was also, you know, twofold here. It was a home base for a foundation that I started. And that was really the motivational force in getting the space that I got and putting so much energy into it, because I had started, you know, throwing these events and doing these different things and realized very quickly that if you don't have your own home base, sometimes even if you're renting a place, something will fall through. Yeah. And then you've got an event planned and hundreds of people are going to come to this event and the event's not there because it's not your space.
So meaning like you bought a space?
I didn't at that point. I rented a space first. I do own the building I'm in now.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother story of like trying to beat the rental game because, you know, you move into a neighborhood, you get this great rent and they want you to help raise the bar and, you know, improve the neighborhood. And then you do that and you pay rent on this space and improve this space. And then 2 years later, they triple your rent because now it's a really nice neighborhood. Yeah. And you were part of that and you don't get rewarded for that. So,
right. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you find this space, you knew, so I heard you say like, I wanted a home base for my foundation. What did a space or a home base for that need to have to be able to support that?
Well, I mean, maybe I could tell you a little bit about the foundation, and then you'll understand why that connection is a reality.
Yeah.
So we started off, actually I started off, it's kind of a long story. Is that all right?
Yeah, go. Okay. Yeah, I want to know all about it.
Yeah, so I started off feeling very much obligated to give back to the community, like I mentioned. Like people just were pouring in this support for me and my art, and I felt immediately that, okay, there's folks that aren't as fortunate as me. Even coming from my background and all the things I'd been through, I was like, wow, I'm experiencing this life that I never thought possible, and I immediately want other people to be able to experience this too. And I can't teach everybody how to tattoo. So I was looking to volunteer at different places and work with, you know, high-risk youth, addicts in recovery, animals in need, the native population, just all the things that are close to my heart. And I realized really quickly that being a dad and a full-time tattooer doesn't allow me much time to do volunteer work. And so it was little drops in a bucket, and it was very frustrating because I felt like I was making no difference.
Yeah.
And so what I did realize about these nonprofits is that they're doing amazing work, and they're on the front lines, and they're taking care of all these things that are like the glue that binds our society together at those lower levels. These people are getting services that are crucial, but they are very bad at fundraising. They're terrible. They have like these galas with like rubber chicken dinners and like Bath and Body Works baskets on auction and all the things they're donated. And I was like, this is terrible. These people are raising no money. My tattooing is very sought after now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start tattooing one day a month and donate everything I make to these places that I was volunteering at. So I picked 3, and I would tattoo all day, and I would just give them 100% of the money. I thought I can give up one day a month easy.
Yeah.
And very swiftly, I'll try to make this as condensed as I can, but other artists started to hear about what I was doing. And it turns out a lot of artists are in that same kind of state of mind. Like, they want to make a change. A lot of us come from kind of punk rock backgrounds, and, we've existed on the fringes of society. And so we're very almost painfully aware of some of the things that need to be done, but we're powerless, right, by ourselves. And so other artists would jump in and be like, okay, I want to do that, and I want to donate a day of tattooing a month. And then all of a sudden I was like, wow, there's like 10 people doing this now. I didn't even ask any of these people to do it.
Yeah.
And I was realizing that by myself, so I'd raise a couple grand. That's awesome.
Yeah.
10 of us together,
Yeah.
we're raising like 10 to 20 grand.
Yeah.
And then I was like, what if we put this together in an event space? And then we included like live music and like, other forms of entertainment, and then people could sell prints. It kind of like a miniature convention, but all for supporting these nonprofits. And so we started doing this in donated spaces, and it'd be like an old VFW or in our old warehouse.
Yeah.
And that was great when it worked, but we encountered some really interesting challenges where sometimes the spaces would be like easy to donate because they weren't necessarily up to code. Right. And so we'd be in the middle of tattooing and the lights go out.
Yeah.
Or in the middle of tattooing and we realize, hey, there's no heat in this space.
Yeah.
And it's winter. Anyhow, long story short, I realized quickly when a couple of those events fell through that we need a home base. And this is where we come to why I need to have my own shop and why it's important to have a building, because if all else fails, we can at least put the event at the shop. Yeah. And everybody can tattoo in it and we can do what we do. Within the course of the first couple of years, it became what I would call a foundation. And it was a situation where people were feeling so amazing. Like it was so great to give back doing what we love that people were about it and they wanted to do it more. So we were doing it like once a month in different venues and with different artists. And then all of a sudden it grew to this thing where I don't have space to take all these people in that want to do this with me anymore. So we started renting big venues. And that's kind of where we're at now, where we usually have between 30 and 40 tattooers at a time.
Wow, that's sick.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And we have, anybody who knows about the electronic music world has heard the name Grizz. Grant is a buddy of ours, and he's come and played a couple of our events. Nice. We've had other artists play. We have people do pop-up live painting. We have people donate food trucks for the day. Liquid Death Water comes and hangs out in their hearse all day. It's wild what it's become. And I keep going back to this concept of like gratitude and giving back, because my success is because of the community supporting me, right? Yeah. And so if I can drop a number here, I'm proud of this, and that's why I like to talk about it, but we've raised over $260,000 as a ragtag bunch of tattooers just doing what we love. And we gave it 100%.
Now, can anyone get involved?
We have
How does that work?
Criteria. We want...
But it is possible.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, other tattooers from other shops approach us a lot. Say, hey, can I work the next event? And as long as we have space, everybody's welcome. Nice. We've had people travel in from out of state to do it, actually, because they hear about it, and they want to learn how to do it and bring it back to their communities, and then they do the same.
So if someone wanted to get involved, who would they reach out? Where would they go?
There's a foundation link on the website for the shop.
Yeah.
It's easy. It's allsacred.com.
Yeah, we can put it up, too.
Yeah, for sure.
And the foundation link has a history of all the events we've done, and upcoming events. Our next one's on August 17th.
Nice.
So we got a big one coming up this summer. We're actually going to have live bands for the first time.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever thought about documenting everything? Maybe just to kind of like how you said people want to take it and, you know.
I would love that. I would absolutely love that. It's a situation where we always have, this is the business model, right? I always wanted to avoid admin costs and any gray area of like, okay, so they raised $50,000 in a day, but why was only $40,000 donated?
Right.
Because that's what people hate about nonprofit
Yeah.
fundraising. You know, the United Way or like the blood drives and stuff, they give like 5% of the money they raise.
Oh my God, those blood drives make so much money.
Yeah, it's
incredible. Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah.
So we've always said, no, we give 100% of everything we make.
Yeah.
So as far as a documentary or as far as people being involved, it's people show up and they do what they do. We've never had somebody show up that wants to do a documentary.
Right.
I mean, that'd be amazing. But we have a lot of people show up and tattoo all day and donate 100%. We have vendors and musicians and food trucks, like I mentioned. And it's really wonderful because in my opinion, the most important people are the people that are doing the work that nobody wants to do at those events. So it's the volunteers that show up and clean up and set up. You know, it's the people that show up in the hot sun and make food all day while we're inside, you know, tattooing in the AC.
Yeah.
And I just think it's really wonderful for everybody to do their part and walk away with that sense of contributing. To
Oh,
the whole.
100%.
Dude, thank you so much for joining us. It was awesome having you.
Yeah, I really
Thank you.
appreciate
Yeah,
it,
of
man.
course, dude.
I appreciate it too. Thanks so much.
Thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Unemployable Podcast. And we'll catch you guys next week.
Guys, hope you enjoyed the episode. I know we joke around a lot and get wild on some topics, but one topic I take very serious is addiction. If you or anyone you know is struggling, don't be afraid to reach out and get the help you need.